Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams and I'm joined for the last time this month to come to the end of his short-term loan deal. Andrew Beasley, how are you feeling, mate?
Yeah, Shane, this is my last appearance for the Analysing Anfield team, but hopefully I can put in a good display. And obviously I've only done a couple of these, but I guess it must be quite rare where you've had a couple of Liverpool wins to talk about in the same show.
Yeah, well, in a sense, I suppose you are a good luck charm, really. So we could do with keeping you around. And you say it's your last appearance as well. I have a feeling it won't be your last, ever. I think you will appear on again, mate. I'm pretty confident of that. But yeah, it's been a decent period recording, really, because as you say, we have picked up a few wins. We've just beat West Ham, so it's another win. What did you think of the game?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's sort of strange in a way. Obviously, both teams scored these long-range goals that sort of cancelled each other out. I thought Liverpool were pretty comfortable, particularly in the first half. But obviously, some of the same problems remained, where West Ham were able to get through them a little bit too easily at times. I think you saw again sort of first half perhaps a bit more them taking advantage of Liverpool's right of their defence, as teams have done for many years. The sort of tactical shift hasn't sort of totally solved that. Teams are probably still going to target that side, and Saeed Benrahma got on the ball quite a lot. Possibly should have done a bit more with it and things like that. But I think overall you've got to be happy with the performance. I think they deserve the victory. The sort of late potential handball aside might have ruined it, but yeah, I think on the whole they played pretty well.
Yeah, you mentioned the long range goals there. Actually, I thought that earlier in the game. I thought that was quite a weird anomaly that both teams had opened the scoring from well outside the box. And I mean, I wasn't planning to talk about this, but you have just planted the seed in the end. In terms of the goaler, I completely lost his name.
Gakpo,
What is it?
Paquetá?
No, Packets. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think his goal, mate. I was quite surprised. Allison conceded that. I don't know about you, but it felt relatively sensible in comparison to the goals he's conceded from outside the box in the past. Like if you think of the Lionel Messi free kick, for example, they do usually have to be either ferocious attempts in terms of velocity or just perfectly placed. And it don't get me wrong, he did strike it fairly well. But I thought that just based on what we've seen in the past from Allison, that's probably I don't want to say the worst goal he's conceded from outside the box, but it did feel like usually he would prevent that from going in. I don't know if he was unsighted or what.
Yeah, I think, did it take a slight deflection? It looked like it might have. I don't know if that sort of wrong-footed him, something like that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you go back through his early time with Liverpool, and there was hardly any goals conceded from outside the box. I mean, there was one Burnley scored direct from a corner when they basically had two guys holding him down, pretty much, which technically counts as a goal from outside the box. But in terms of those sort of fairly central shots and stuff like that, there really haven't been many over the years. I mean, I'm sort of looking down the list of the ones he's conceded from further out, and I don't know what the sort of distance and the XG was for that one yesterday, but yeah, like you say, it's probably one of the worst ones. It wasn't in the top corner. It wasn't, it didn't even look like it was traveling that quickly. It was a surprise to see him close to it and yet not able to stop it. But again, I think we spoke about him last week, didn't we? And I think with everything he's done this season, we can forgive him the occasional thing because he's kept Liverpool at a vaguely credible level when things could have been much worse this season. But yeah, I suspect he'll be disappointed with it, and it's the sort of thing we won't see from him too often.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly aren't criticising him, as we said last week. It's, we owe a lot to him this season in terms of points, even despite our current position in the table. He's overperformed, I think, by at least 10 goals, something like that. I think it was around 12 last time I checked. I've just had a look at the XG attached to the shot, only using Understat's model, but Understat I've got it at 0.02, as in that shot basically goes in 2% of the time.
Yeah.
So that's a relatively strange one for him to concede. But then at the opposite end, Gakpo's was also a 0.02 shot. Bit of a strange opening to the game, I suppose. But I think Klopp touched on it after the game. I thought Liverpool's reaction was really good. Past couple of months, we've talked about that and how it's been just generally really weird to see Liverpool suffer these kind of setbacks and really, the heads drop essentially. This felt like more of a we've conceded first, but we can still go on and win this. It felt like there was an element of belief there, and maybe stemming from this new system that we're working with. Players seem to like it. Players seem to be getting the best out of themselves with it, certain players in particular. And I think one of them is probably Curtis Jones. I think for me, he was very, very good again. 4 starts in a row now. He's keeping Thiago on the bench, which takes some doing. And if it was me as well, people who listen to this show will know I'm a huge, huge fan of Thiago. I would keep him on the bench as well. I think Jones has been one of the real ideal fits for the nature of this system and what you need to play as a number 8 in this system now compared to before.
Yeah, I saw your newsletter. Was it yesterday, earlier this week? Anyway, you sort of talked about Klopp referring to the midfielders as 10s rather than 8s, which is sort of an interesting change of tack, it feels like. People have probably seen the various stats from yesterday, but obviously Jones was very high up on the list for progressive passes, progressive carries, receiving progressive passes as well. I mean, I know his 8 progressive carries has only been done once this season by anyone at Liverpool. Salah did it in a game. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but to do that many in a game has been quite rare. And obviously Liverpool dominated possession as they have done in their last few games. And obviously them having more of the ball is going to give their players more opportunities to record these sorts of stats than in some other games. But no, I thought he was really good. I've just finished an article for .com, probably be out by the time this is released, about how, Henderson found him in the box a couple of times in the first half. And you just don't really see that from Liverpool midfielders, one setting up another in the box. One was just a pass, one was for a chance, for a header that Jones had. Not a great header, but fact is it created a chance. And you haven't seen that from Liverpool midfielders very much at all, if ever. And maybe this is, it's hinting at what's going to come in the future with Klopp talking about 10s and the fact that these guys are linking up for each other, crossing to each other in the box and that sort of thing. It's not something we've seen, but it's very exciting to think about what it might lead to in the future.
Yeah, well, I'll touch on a quote now, actually, if I can find it. I think, it was something along the lines of Klopp touching on Forest and how they man-marked Liverpool's box midfield, which I thought was interesting. Obviously, we haven't touched on that yet because that was over the weekend and Liverpool have played again since. Yeah. But in that game against Forest, Liverpool used this box midfield again: Fabinho, Trent, Henderson, Jones. And the way in which Forest counteracted that was they basically man-marked them. So the centre of the pitch was really jam-packed. And it caused problems for Liverpool. I think Liverpool generated about 0.4 XG in open play.
Yeah,
and about 2.9 XG from set pieces, which is insane. So that's one way to win a game when the middle's clogged. But more often than not, funnily enough, I thought this West Ham game was going to be relatively similar without the set pieces, because West Ham, up until this game, have conceded the fewest goals from set pieces all season with 3. Now it's 4 on the back of Matip's goal, which we will probably touch on. But yeah, Liverpool are going to face these kind of, now that Liverpool seems to be going forward with this 3-2-5 shape with the ball, we're going to face these kind of nullifying tactics every now and then. Forest showed us that. And West Ham showed us a different version of it, I suppose. It wasn't specifically man-marking. But Liverpool did well to navigate it. And you touched there on possession that we've picked up. So this has definitely been a new change on the back of the system. So against Forest in the 3-2 win, we posted 80% possession. That's our most all season. In fact, I don't know if you've got the numbers, mate, but I'd say that's possibly the most of Klopp's tenure, is it? Maybe.
Yeah, I think there was maybe one game, I'm pretty sure there was, I have got the numbers here somewhere, where they had like 81 or 82. But I mean, yeah, it's right at the top of what they normally, way above what they would normally have or could normally expect to have. Let's have a look. Yeah, they had 82 in the game against Everton last season at home that they won 2-0.
Yeah, okay.
That was 82% possession. So that was perhaps a touch higher, but sort of broadly similar game. Obviously, Liverpool very dominant against a struggling team. So, yeah, it is rare for them to sort of hit that 80% mark.
Yeah, well, just looking at the numbers for the season so far, in 3 of the 4 games that we've played with this new 3-2-5, we've posted 72% possession or more. So 80% against Forest, 73% against Leeds, 72% against West Ham. They are all inside Liverpool's top 7 totals for the Premier League season so far. So it shows how this new shape has kind of impacted the landscape quite dramatically. And in terms of Jones, obviously you touched there, it brings him into like number 10 spaces. He can perform like a number 10 rather than a kind of controlling number 8, which is what the left-sided number 8 has been in the previous seasons. And I think, you mentioned there that he was top for progressive carries. He was top or joint top at least for progressive passes as well. He posted 8 of those alongside Matip. But in addition to that, kept the ball an awful lot as well. In addition to moving the ball forward, I think he misplaced 2 passes on the day against West Ham. So just a really top performance. And I mean, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, mate, that you've listened to Analysing Anfield over the years. One of their talking points that has popped up every now and then on this show has been Curtis Jones. What's he doing? Is he a sellable asset now? Is he coming on? What's the problem? And that sort of thing. And I like to think that I've been relatively patient with him. But what's your take on him as a player and specifically now? I mean, yes, I know now it's a lot easier because he's looking really good lately. But past couple of months, past couple of seasons, really, it's been a little bit tricky to pinpoint where he's going as a player.
Yeah, I've always broadly been a fan. I mean, as you say, he's sort of been in and out of the side a little bit, and he's had all these starts in a row recently, which obviously helps. I think you're still seeing one of his perhaps biggest issues is sort of holding on to the ball a little too long. He'll find himself in a great position, bring the ball forward, and then he's not picking the right pass, or he's being, tackled by an opponent and stuff like that. I mean, if he could get that out of his game, then he'd possibly be a superstar. I don't know, but yeah, I've always been a sort of fan, and it's interesting to see him developing now because sort of makes you think, well, if he'd been fit earlier in the season, perhaps Liverpool's midfield issues wouldn't have been quite as pronounced as they have been. I mean, that's possibly praising him a little bit highly, but having that kind of player available would certainly have changed things, and it's interesting to think how it might have gone. But yeah, while he remains ultimately a saleable asset in the sense that he's of approaching peak age. I think he's 22 and he recently signed a long contract. I mean, I'm hoping they don't sell him this summer and give him a chance to see what he can do next season, because as we've said, the recent games have shown that he could well be an asset.
Yeah, well, as I said, I think a lot of it comes from this system change, and a lot of it would depend for me on whether this is going to stick around. If we are going to stick with this moving forward, it does totally change the kind of duties that are lying on his shoulders in terms of playing as a number 8 for Liverpool. In this system, he can play predominantly in the final third. We know he's very attack-minded. He's got a pass. There's a bit of a forward as well. He's quite skillful, close control. And I think he's actually, past 4 games, I think he's looked more comfortable on the ball than Henderson has. Whereas the previous version of Liverpool's 4-3-3, as I said, that kind of left-sided number 8 was a controlling type. It was about dictating plays. It was about accelerating the game at the right times. It was about keeping the ball, not being too expressive or kind of attack-minded unless the game needed that, which we know Wijnaldum could deliver every now and then when Liverpool needed a goal. But it really is a complete shift in terms of responsibilities, and stemming from Fabinho and Trent holding the fort behind them. So if this is going to stick, I think it'll definitely stick for the rest of the season. So I think between now and the end of the campaign, Jones will probably continue to impress for me. I would have no interest in introducing a Thiago or anything like that ahead of him now. I think Jones has locked it down for me. So hopefully he keeps going in the same vein. But it is over the past few years, he has been the kind of player that you have had to be patient with, even though, as you say, he is still only 22, which in reality, one of the things we have to think about is Liverpool usually probably wouldn't sign a player until he was at least 22. So all of the development Jones has already done, we don't typically see that as Liverpool supporters. That gets done at like Porto or Roma or Southampton or whoever you want. And then we get the finished product when he's here. And I think if you look at like players at Barcelona and Real Madrid, their academy graduates that end up making it, they don't actually end up making it in terms of being fixed starters until like like 23 onwards, it's only every now and then you get like a real anomaly, like a Gavi potentially starting as an 18-year-old. So I think his age needs to be reinforced. Really, still only 22, and he's still got plenty of time ahead of him.
Yeah, I think it works both ways. I mean, if it doesn't really happen at Liverpool, I was about to say if everyone's fit, that never happens. But if everyone's fit and playing well, then he probably doesn't get the opportunities to shine. And he's had these opportunities lately, and he's done well. But yeah, like you say, I mean, he's 22. I think we've mentioned before, he's sort of like the oldest of the young guys, if that makes sense. Before you hit Liverpool's midfield void of nobody in sort of peak age, he's the oldest of the young guys. And I think we're starting to see him hopefully not reach his full potential, but he's sort of heading in that direction. He's just starting to improve pretty much all the time. And I think he could be a key player next season. I mean, next season is Thiago's last on his contract. It's hard to imagine them offering him an extension unless he has a remarkable season next season. So it could be we're seeing Jones sort of going past Thiago in the pecking order, which seems kind of crazy. But I think the way things are going, and as I say, Thiago only having 1 year left, that could be where we're at.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I don't really think Thiago's deal will get extended. I think that was the original plan, to get him in as a 29-year-old, use him up for a few years, and then just let him go when his contract expires. So I've got no major issues with that, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of Jones maybe improving as a player and areas he can work on, you did mention there about his tendency to hold on to the ball. I think if you look at that, for me, there's players out there that do that, and it's not a problem, because when they release it, it's such a dangerous pass or whatever when they do release the ball that it works. And a player who comes to mind with that is Grealish. Grealish is a player over the past few years. I think Graham Souness has come out actually and criticised him on the back of it, just in terms of him holding on to the ball. But for me, it was never an issue for Grealish, because when he did finally release it, he'd kind of attracted so many bodies towards him that his next pass would be really dangerous, or it'd open up a defence, split the defence. I think Jones can hold on to the ball quite a bit, and he does attract this attention, which is good. But then his eventual pass might just be 5 yards to the side of him. And in that sense, maybe you give the opposition a bit of time to kind of get back behind the ball and things like that. So, but in terms of his strengths, he's a keen ball carrier. We know that. I think his counter pressing as well has been really, really good over the past few games. Liverpool's counter press is definitely returned, and I think that's why maybe we're posting so much possession of late. I think potentially as well, looking at the type of player he is in terms of being like attack minded and stuff, I think he can potentially like find a penalty box a little bit more with his passes and maybe deliver a few more in terms of like goals and assists and things like that. But getting extra critical a little bit there. It's only 4 games in this role, but I do think he's got areas to work on while also having obvious strengths as well in the data.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's worth mentioning, you've just sort of reminded me there talking about the counter press and stuff like that. I mean, one thing I noticed yesterday, like Liverpool made more tackles than West Ham, more interceptions than West Ham. They matched them for ball recoveries. It looked to me from StatZone, Liverpool made something like 10 in the final third. So if they're outworking teams defensively while also having 73% possession or whatever it was, very high share of the ball, then I mean that's only a great thing. I mean, that's going to delight Klopp, those kind of numbers, because we've seen for much of this season Liverpool being outworked by the opposition. And obviously it's a fairly crude way of measuring it. People like to look at distance covered and sprints and all these things, but they're not so easy to come by. But I tend to think that if Liverpool are dominating the ball and dominating the defensive stats, then that can only be a good thing. And Jones has obviously contributed to that much as the other players have recently. Yeah,
well, another player who has kind of shined of late, and certainly did against West Ham, I thought it was one of his better games so far, was Cody Gakpo. Obviously opened the scoring. And to be honest, the way in which he opened the scoring, I have expected a tiny bit more of that, actually, just based on what he did at PSV. One of the perks attached to his game is he can strike a ball, and he can finish from distance if you need him to. At Liverpool so far, maybe some of those efforts from outside the box have been a little bit rushed, a little bit panicked. But when he does connect, it wasn't even that great of a connection, to be honest. It was just extremely well placed. I think it might have crept in off the post, actually. But Gakpo does have that to his game, and I suppose in comparison to someone like a Firmino, for example, that's something that he's probably got a bit of an edge on him over. I think he's a bit more of a goal threat than Firmino was, more of a threat from outside the box, certainly a better ball carrier. But then there's other ways in which Firmino certainly has the edge. So, but he still seems to be being used like this kind of false nine. But I suppose it is slightly different now, considering Liverpool do have two advanced number 8s either side of Gakpo, whereas Firmino was just kind of occupying all of that space on his own, which made him special, really.
Yeah, they're obviously sort of slightly different types of players, but I've been impressed with Gakpo lately. And as you say, goals from outside the box is sort of an issue for Liverpool. I mean, I can understand why they try and make better quality chances. It sort of makes sense. But something that's stuck with me since last season is that, Liverpool scored more goals than Man City from inside the box, which you might not have expected, but fewer overall because they hardly scored any from outside the box, whereas City have always been pretty good at that with guys like De Bruyne, most obviously.
Rodri.
Yeah, exactly. Vincent Kompany, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, those sort of goals that tend to stick in the memory, But so it's something Liverpool have sort of struggled with. And I know before the Leeds game, they'd only scored 4 from outside the box. Jota then added 2, but obviously they were outside the box technically, but they're probably in the D, so it's sort of, borderline, if you like. So that one from Gakpo was sort of like a real rarity. I mean, you have to take single shot figures with a pinch of salt, but on the FB Ref page for the match, it says the chance was 0.03 xG, and in the post shot 0.49. So he's taken a 1 in 33 shot, and then with his finishings, basically made it a 1 in 2 chance of being a goal. They say he hit it from 31 yards. I can't imagine there's been any further goals out than that from Liverpool this season. I can just have a quick look, but adding that sort of threat can only be a good thing. It's, as I say, something Liverpool have sort of been lacking in recent times. Perhaps tactically, as I say, trying to get good chances, but apparently it equals Trent Alexander-Arnold goal against Rangers, which I think was a free kick. Apparently. So, other than that, longest range goal Liverpool have scored in open play this season. And coming so quickly on the back of West Ham scoring, we've talked about it's good that they came from behind to win. Well, maybe they don't if they don't equalise as quickly as they do. So, good goal at a good time.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, actually, in terms of the goals from distance, because I think so far this season, Liverpool, in my opinion, for the most part, have been pretty good in attack in terms of consistently being in the top 3 in the Premier League for expected goals per match, which is fine, really, in terms of Liverpool's level. It's been the defensive side of the game where Liverpool have been 11th, 12th, 13th, which is really bad, obviously. But one thing I wrote a piece on this maybe about a month ago when Jota and Diaz were returning to full fitness. And it's just this kind of concept of, it to an extent sounds very simplistic, but the more you score, the more points you tend to get. And it tends, there's kind of a general rule, as in for every goal you score, you get 1 point. That's kind of how it roughly works out if you look at the end of the season. So, for example, last season, Liverpool scored 94, 92 points. Chelsea scored 76, 74 points. Spurs scored 69, 71 points. That kind of thing. It's usually quite close. And lately, obviously, Liverpool have introduced a bit of firepower and they're scoring in different ways in terms of Gakpo scoring from distance, Jota scoring from distance. Against Forest, we scored 3 set pieces. Against West Ham, we scored a set piece. We've got introducing Diaz from the bench, who Klopp has touched on in the past, has good long distance shooting. Introducing Núñez as a substitute. So I think Liverpool, this kind of introduction of new ways to score goals essentially is always obviously going to benefit you in terms of your ability to win games and find ways to kind of deliver solutions on the pitch.
Yeah, Diaz has been good for that. He scored from outside the box against Palace, which obviously equaliser earned a point, and he also scored at Napoli, which was ultimately completely pointless. But another long-range goal there. Good to see. Just being able to sort of mix it up with all these different options. I mean, it comes back to sort of joking about, oh, everyone's never, you never have everybody fit. But, Klopp's got all these different forwards are basically available now. I mean, I've been impressed with a lot of what Nunes has done this season, but he's barely getting a look in now. And he's sort of fallen down the pecking order just because the other guys have come in and are doing a really good job. But yeah, if they can add long range goals, I mean, they've always been pretty good at set piece goals. They seem to have come in a bit of a flurry recently. I did hear on the Liverpool TV review show that this was the 6th time Liverpool scored 3 set piece goals in a Premier League match. And they also did it against Bournemouth earlier this season, and they did it against Palace last season at Anfield. That was 3-0, if I remember right. So that they have these games in them more so than sort of Liverpool teams of the past. But I think we're seeing now how important they can be. I mean, for all the benefits we seem to be getting from this new tactical system, as you mentioned, they created very little in open play against Nottingham Forest. I think last night a tiny bit better on that front, but again, it's a goal from outside the box and a set piece. They're not really creating really great big chances. I think Jota possibly had a couple last night, one a header and one did he hit it over the bar, I think, in the first half, something like that. But they haven't been creating a lot in open play, so they need to remain good at these set piece opportunities.
Yeah, well, Liverpool have 14 goals this season in the Premier League from set pieces, which is the most in the Premier League. That's probably might be a surprising start for a lot of people listening, to be honest, because I don't know about you, but certainly my dad, when we're watching the game, I think every fan, to be honest, always thinks their own team can never cross the ball beyond the first man. We do suffer from that. Every team suffers from that. But Liverpool are surprisingly good from set pieces when it comes to scoring 14 in a single season so far, which is obviously very good. Another player, again, really, really good again, was Trent. I mean, he looks at home, doesn't he? He looks like he's played there his whole career. And to be honest, it shouldn't be a surprise, because if you think of the inverted fullback and what that role consists of and the players who've occupied that role, the few players who've occupied that role over the past couple of years in different leagues, it is the kind of Trent player in terms of a fullback who is intelligence, really good vision, really technical, great passer of the ball, composed, cool. And Trent is all those things, and I think so far he just looks like the ultimate inverted fullback for me. I mean, we're judging this based on 4 games, but he looks perfect. He looks like he's so comfortable doing it. He doesn't look like it's a challenge to him at all. He looks like more of a midfielder than Fabinho for me. So long may it continue, really.
Yeah, he's been going really well there. I mean, I think we said in the past shows, have to be wary that Liverpool haven't played too many great teams with this system. They did play Arsenal, but that that's come from 2-0 down in that game, and then they've played 3 struggling teams. So you always have to bear that in mind. But no, I mean, he's looking great. I mean, obviously another assist last night, owed more probably to Gakpo's finish than the pass, but you just see the pass he made. I mean, that's from a central midfield role. That's not a right back sort of pass through the centre of the pitch there to the centre forward. That doesn't happen probably if he's playing as a standard right back. And it's not an accident that he's sort of creating all these chances and from that position. I think we say on this last week about sort of linking up with Nunes quite a lot and stuff like that. Maybe Jota, I think there was a good pass to him last night, sort of through the centre of the pitch as well. Yeah, and all these kind of things. Ultimately getting your best passer on the ball more often, it's not rocket science, I suppose. But if Liverpool can do that with this system, which they seem to be from the limited evidence, then it only bodes well, because Trent can pick out anybody from there, basically. So, long may that continue.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that this role has almost forced him to basically keep the ball more often than he ever has before. Against Leeds, he posted a pass completion of about 90%, just under, which was his most for the season. Against West Ham last night was his 4th most for the season in terms of pass completion, his 4th highest pass completion for the season. His 6th was Arsenal. The game against Forest was surprisingly low, actually. He posted under 70% for that game, despite playing in central midfield. Maybe he was trying too many things in that packed midfield or something, but he's keeping the ball more often, but while still being his usual creative self, really. I think is it 5 assists now, 4 assists or so in the past 4 games, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously there is quite a bit of set play involvement there. They've
Yeah,
not all been in open play or anything like that. But yeah, he's creating chances still. And I don't know what you think. I mean, it seems to me like he's sort of better, sort of defensively, almost like sort of getting back from midfield positions and harrying opponents and stuff like that and winning the ball back. I mean, maybe it's just something I'm sort of hoping to see, and I'm sort of picking out the good examples or whatever. But it seems to me that he's sort of defensively thriving from that position as well.
yeah, I agree, and I think that just the team in general looks so much more stable. I think obviously West Ham got out once or twice, but it is difficult to keep the likes of Paqueta and Bowen and players like that consistent, and Ben Rahman as well, consistently contained. So I think they got out about as much as they would have got out during Liverpool's absolute peak when we were at the top of the world, really. I think Liverpool did really well to control the game. The counter press, as I said, has been so impressive the past few games. I think Jones has been a really integral part of that. I think it's the reason why Gakpo and Jota are consistently starting every week rather than Nunes, for example. Like you mentioned there, that Nunes can't really get a look in. I do think it stems from the defensive side of the game, really. Because I think if you were to include Liverpool's most dangerous players on the pitch, for me, Nunes is comfortably there. I think he's still comfortably top of the Premier League for shots per 90. We know he's a chance magnet and he's really quick and things like that. Massive threat in behind and stuff, good in the air. But defensively, maybe it's not really there yet. Like, I don't know if you've seen the clip from a set piece, Jordan Henderson, basically grabbing hold of him and telling them who to mark type thing. And on the back of it, obviously, it ended up with Henderson with egg on his face, essentially, because the space that Henderson moved Nunes out of, we ended up conceding from against Forest. I think it was Gibbs. I think it was Gibbs White.
Mm-hmm,
But
yeah.
what I'm getting at is the fact that Henderson even had to do that. He just wouldn't have had to do that with Mane, for example, or Firmino, So I feel like Nunes maybe has to work on that side of his game a little bit. But overall, the 11 that Klopp's been picking lately, it has been so much better defensively, and I suppose that can bring me on to just looking at Liverpool's numbers for this kind of period. So for the season, Liverpool have not been posting dominant numbers to the extent that we haven't deserved to win consistently, because each game has been essentially a coin flip. Liverpool's past 4 games against Arsenal, we posted 3.9 expected goals. Arsenal posted 1.4. Most weeks you probably win that. Against Leeds, we posted 2.7 expected goals and give away 1.4 again. Again, you probably win that most weeks. Then against Forest, we posted 2.8, give away 0.9. And against West Ham, we posted 1.9 and give away 0.8. So for me, you've probably got 4 deserved wins there. We only actually got 3 because of the draw against Arsenal. But this is the kind of notable shift, really, that this kind of new system has delivered, which is it's kind of come out of nowhere, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be hypercritical, and obviously we always are about our own team, all fans are. I mean, they've not given up much in expected goals, yet they're not keeping clean sheets. They are conceding, even though they're not giving up very much. But it's more important to focus on the process. And as you say, it's sort of heading in the right direction after a season in which it hasn't. The possession is going to help with that. Obviously, if they can keep the ball more, that should restrict the opportunities for the other team, even though they are still having some. But yeah, I think it's just they've just got to find that balance where they can create a bit more in open play. And as we've said, it's great that they're so good at set pieces, but you can't sort of rely on set piece goals. They've generally been very streaky for them this season, scoring sort of 3 in 3 games, and then they had a run of 20 matches where they only scored 2 set piece goals, and now they're hot at them again. I think that sort of thing is fairly common. You'll have good runs and bad, so you can't rely on that as great as they've been in the last few weeks. So we do want to see more from them in open play, but yeah, I mean, on the whole, as you say, they're putting in performances where they deserve to win games, and that's certainly not been happening on a consistent basis throughout this season.
Yeah, well, this brings us on to our next game. Obviously, we have Spurs. It's going to be an interesting one, and one of the reasons it's going to be interesting is because of what I've just touched on, really, in terms of Liverpool are top of the league for set piece goals. But up until last night, when we scored against West Ham using Joel Matip, we were joint top with Spurs, who have had Gianni Vio as their kind of set piece expert all season. He was brought in by Antonio Conte. Conte's now obviously left. His backup has also left now. 2 sackings somehow. But Vio has stayed. So it could come down to set pieces, to be honest, which could be interesting on the weekend. But I mean, I don't know, mate. What do you make of Spurs?
It's hard to know where to start, isn't it? Really, like
Yeah.
most weeks they seem to be in crisis, and yet they were still 5th in the league or 6th in the league till last night. I think Liverpool have gone above them on goal difference with the win against West Ham. But it feels like, if you sort of think about it, it feels like Liverpool have had a much worse season, but that's probably because we pay far closer attention to Liverpool than we do to Tottenham. But it does feel like they've had a lot of bad performances, particularly away from home. Obviously, Newcastle being a standout example of that last weekend. And yet they're still sort of up there in the league. So I think they still pick up wins every so often. But interesting game, because obviously, Liverpool last season had a really good season, but they did struggle against Tottenham at Anfield. It finished 1-1. I think Tottenham had chances to win it, and Liverpool needed a goal from Diaz. Was it deflected? I think it might have been, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously that's a long time ago now. It's like 12 months ago, and Tottenham are not even the team they were then, much less at their best under sort of Pochettino 3 or 4 years earlier. But just a strange club to sack Conte with and then replace him with his assistant, who was going to do the same thing. I mean, you had Conte basically talk himself out of a job with that press conference at Southampton. And I think most people now are saying, well, actually, a lot of what he said is basically right, or it seems that way. And then you've got his assistant take over, and he's basically got himself out of the job by selecting a back four at Newcastle when Tottenham hadn't played with a back four since, I can't remember when it was, 2018 or something. I did see the stat. A long time, basically, because they've had, they've been playing with a back three. And while there's nothing wrong necessarily with shaking things up to try and sort of get a reaction or response, or improve the team and things like that. I mean, there's a bit of a risk to do that at Newcastle when they've been flying, particularly at home this season. I mean, it's sort of offering up Newcastle a chance to have the advantage there, and they took it in quite spectacular style. But so I'm sort of confident Liverpool will be okay. But it is also fair to say you just don't know what Spurs are going to turn up. Obviously, as we're recording this on Thursday as well, they're playing Man United tonight, so that's another big game for them. Liverpool have an extra day's rest. It's a tight turnaround for Tottenham, Thursday to Sunday, and I guess that can only help Liverpool as well.
Yeah, it's such a shame that they did the back four against Newcastle rather than Liverpool. That could have been hilarious. I mean, I'm going to say it could have been a bloodbath. It was a bloodbath at St James's Park anyway.
Yeah.
But that was a bold move to go and do that. And I think on the back of that, they will naturally go back to a back five for the rest of the season, probably. We will see evidence of that tonight, as you say, against Manchester United. But I don't know. I mean, they are, as you say, a really strange team. I think previous seasons we've been concerned that they've been, above all else, a bit of a two-man team. This season they're a one-man team. Son Heung-min seems to have suffered the same kind of season as like many Liverpool players in terms of like burnout and stuff like that potentially.
Yeah.
But Harry Kane's just doing what he's always done. He's 20 goals, non-penalty so far in the Premier League this season. Only Erling Haaland has more, and he's only got 7 more actually in terms of non-penalty goals. And if you think of how much better City have been compared to Spurs, Kane just keeps doing it. Kane just keeps ticking over. So I think he's still the main threat for Liverpool to cater for. I think Kulusevski's a good player, but not particularly sure what's happened there. And I think defensively, I mean, I haven't actually looked at Spurs' numbers this season actually in terms of the underlyings and where they lie in the league. But you say, I think generally they are quite an up and down team that are really difficult to predict, and every now and then they do pick up 1 or 2 results. But overall, it's difficult to determine just how good they are. So in terms of the attack so far this season, they are 7th, I think that is. 7th for expected goals per match. That's non-penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And on the defensive side of the game, I assume this is going to be worse. Oh no, it's about the same.
Okay.
Yeah, they're about 6th actually defensively. So in that sense, if you look at the Premier League table, they're about where they should be, which is quite interesting. But Liverpool, for example, much better in attack than they are in defence. But lately, the defence has maybe crept up a little bit and improved a little bit. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, really, isn't it?
It is. I'm just looking at the Premier League table and I see Spurs have conceded the 6th most goals. So they've obviously got a bit of a problem there. I mean, it seems like Hugo Lloris just basically gave up at half time at Newcastle. I mean, he supposedly came off with an injury, but I think a lot of people would be a bit suspicious about that after the first half he had. And it's funny with Lloris. I think I've got a bit of confirmation bias with him, but I've always sort of thought, he's always got an error in him. I'm not sure he's that good. And then, sometimes he will have good games. I mean, he's a World Cup winner, so what do I know, really? But, I sort of feel like they've probably kept him on a bit too long. And you can understand it. It's hard to find a good goalkeeper. Liverpool know enough about that over sort of, years prior to Alisson. It is hard to get a good goalkeeper, so you want to hang on to one when you've got one. But sort of feel like they've probably hung on to him a bit too long. And you mentioned about set pieces. I was just looking on here. I mean, Harry Kane has scored 7 set-piece goals this season, which is the most of any player. So he's obviously the sort of man to watch for in those situations as well. I mean, you have to think Liverpool will have too much for Tottenham, but as I say, they've proven problems they've given them problems in the past. They're very good on set pieces. I think Liverpool have generally been good on set pieces. I mean, they've only conceded 5 goals. It says on who scored. I think there was a Konate own goal, which won't be counted in that at Brentford as well. But generally been pretty good on defending set pieces. So if they can keep Spurs at bay that way, what else have Spurs got? I guess we'll find out. But I think if I remember rightly, Spurs won the XG when Liverpool won at Tottenham earlier this season. I think they missed some good chances and stuff like that. So it's not impossible they could pull out a performance, I guess. But hopefully not, of course.
Yeah, well, I'd be a lot more concerned if Conte was still in charge. Funnily enough, I know it went sour and things like that, but he generally, off the top of my head, seems to do reasonably well against. I don't know if it's specifically Klopp, but in bigger games when he can be a bit of an underdog, I think he can be. I know he's got a good record against Guardiola. And you just mentioned there about Hugo Lloris. I agree with you. I think he is now 36. We do have to bear that in mind. But this season so far, he is underperforming expected goals by about 4.1. So he has conceded more than he should have in terms of like the average goalkeeper and stuff. But one thing that's interesting about Lloris, I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this story on this podcast, but obviously Liverpool signed Alisson Becker, and he's proved to be an outstanding goalkeeper, probably the best in the world when it comes to shot stopping and over performance and things like that. And a lot of that stems from Liverpool's analysis of him, which is where Ian Graham essentially comes in and the model and all that behind the scenes. But Ian Graham is the man who suggested that Spurs buy Lloris well over a decade ago, when he was just kind of emerging on the scene at Lyon, I think it was, and that was kind of on the back of him not necessarily being a great ball player, not being the type of keeper who might make mistakes. That you remove all of that. It's just based on his shot stopping. And if you look at his shot stopping over the past 5.5 seasons, which is what we have data for, he is overperformed by a fair amount. He's overperforming by 16.3 goals over the past 5.5 Premier League seasons. So it's funny how and Mignolet fitted this mold as well. Mignolet was a bit of an overperformer in some areas when it comes to this, specifically in his final season at Sunderland, I think it was. But that's when you then need to do the further analysis, and you would find out that Mignolet is maybe not very good with his feet. Lloris is prone to just these random errors that kind of cancel out the good shot stopping every now and then. But yeah, that's just a bit of a step back in time there. Go on.
No, I was just going to say with Mignolet, you're right. He did have great numbers at Sunderland, even with the real basic stuff that was available at that time. But I think he sort of proved the problem with the stats in some ways is, he was really good because they were a low block team. Yeah. And he was good at that sort of thing. And then obviously Liverpool play a more expansive style and give up a lot of decent chances as a result. And he wasn't right for that. But it sort of shows how, perhaps goalkeeper, maybe more than any other thing. I mean, they can look good in one system and then look way out of their depth in another, just big differing tactical styles and stuff like that.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. I did say last week, and we'll conclude with this. I did say that if we win our next two, which was against Forest and West Ham, that we would talk about the top four. I must be honest, on the back of the wins, I did check the table last night, and I hoped that it'd look a bit better than it does. But even though Liverpool have won 3 in a row now, we are still just a bit too far off for me. But we are I suppose, was vaguely in contention, you could potentially say. But to be 6 points behind fourth, when fourth have 2 games in hand on you, it does still feel very unrealistic. But I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, mate. I don't know if you can have a bit more positivity than me.
Well, I mean, if you look at 538, Liverpool's chances have improved over the last week.
I was just going to do that, actually, yeah.
The problem is Liverpool's chances have improved from 12% before Forest. It went up to 13%, and now it's gone up to 17%. So it's edging closer. But I mean, 17% is still only a 1 in 6 shot. You've got Newcastle 87% chance of top 4 and United 88% chance of top 4. I just can't see it. I think if they were in this position with maybe 10 games to go, 12 games to go, I would be like, yeah, it's on. And I think it's funny, it sort of felt like when they beat United 7-0, let's mention that again, it sort of felt like top 4 was on, and then it just they didn't sort of kick on from there. And I think not kicking on then has ultimately meant that they're just too far back, as you say, being points behind and games in hand. It's just hard to see. I think Liverpool could potentially win their last 6 games that they've got left, I think.
Yeah.
Tottenham is theoretically the hardest of them, and obviously they're not having a great season. So I don't think it's impossible Liverpool win their last 6 games and finish with 71 points. But 71 points hasn't been enough for top 4. It's just sort of just outside generally. And with the other teams having their advantage, I think it's going to be very, very tough. I think if you were sort of chasing down 1, if 3 were really up there and there was 1 you could sort of aim at, but I think it's going to be very difficult. I think United and Newcastle should be okay from here because they haven't really got any other distractions. United went out of Europe. They've got the FA Cup final, but that's after the end of the season, so that doesn't really play a part. So you could maybe say United's injuries might catch up with them, but it's still a big advantage to make up in the space of 6 games, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difficulty of it is we are reliant on clubs above us to drop points, and they're not great teams, but they're also not bad teams either. I think specifically Newcastle, I do think are a good side this season. United and Newcastle have both basically got the same odds on to finish in the top 4. United 88%, Newcastle 87%. So there's, I suppose, the same probability that either of those will stumble. We just kind of need to put the pressure on to make it so that can happen, really. Our next 3 games are at Anfield, which is a good thing. If we can win 3 games in a row, maybe that turns up the heat a little bit. But I don't know, just for a bit of perspective, I'll quickly run through what the games that Newcastle and United have left, because that determines whether we can get top 4 or not, to be honest. It's not really on us, it's on them. So Newcastle have Everton away, Southampton at home, Arsenal at home, Leeds away, Brighton at home, Leicester at home, and Chelsea away in the final game of the season. So I don't think that's an easy running, to be fair. I think that there could be 1 or 2 slip-ups there. I think obviously Brighton I rate. I mean, I was going to say Chelsea away is a tougher game, but I'm not sure if it even is, to be honest. Everton away they've got next, which could be tricky. You don't know. Then you've got Arsenal as well. And if you look at Man United, obviously they've got Spurs tonight away from home, Villa at home, Brighton away, West Ham away, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, and Fulham at home. It really is a coin flip between who is going to struggle more out of United and Newcastle. They've both got similar-ish fixtures and things like that, so we are reliant on them, but hopefully something happens. You suppose you never know with football, and Liverpool needs to put the pressure on to make it happen, I think. But yeah,
I mean, Sorry, I'd just say both are playing tonight away from home. I mean, if both lose tonight, it doesn't suddenly make Liverpool favourites by any means, but it, just keeps things interesting. If they lose at Newcastle and Spurs, lose at Everton and Spurs, then it could get interesting. You never know, but probably need another couple of wins before we can think any more about it, I think.
Yeah, do you know what? To be honest, without wanting to come across as like, I mean, a bit wrong, really, but we need a few injuries, mate. I think we need them to lose Trippier or something like that, or Rashford to go on the sidelines or something. But yeah, it's one to watch anyway. It's one I'm sure we'll keep talking about so Liverpool can stay in the race. But yeah, Bees, thanks for joining us, mate. It has been a pleasure to podcast with you over the past month.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Happy to step in when required, and hopefully Liverpool could keep winning even in my absence on the podcast. As we say, they've been doing all right these last few weeks, so let's hope that continues.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's been a pleasure to have you on, mate, and I'm sure you'll be on again. Next week, I will be joined by someone different, and I'm going to leave that vague for now. I'm gonna make our listeners just tune in to see who that is. But yeah, thanks for joining us, mate, and we will see you next week.